Now I will invite Professor Paramjit Judge, but before I give him the time, I would like to take 2 minutes to introduce him. Professor Paramjit Judge is the president of Indian Sociological Society, and earlier he has served as an editor of Sociological Bulletin of the Indian Sociological Society. He is also the founder of one of our most prominent RC on social movement. Professor Paramjit has worked in NEHU, Mizoram campus, Punjab Institute of Public Administration in Chandigarh. He has also worked in Center for Social Studies in Surat, and he presently works in Guru Nanak Dev University in Amritsar. During his professional career, he has held positions such as head Department of Sociology, Dean, Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Director, IQAC, Coordinator, Center for the Study of Social Exclusion and Inclusive Policy, and also Dean Academic Affairs. He's also an eminent Punjabi novelist. He received a Commonwealth Fellowship and Shastri Indo-Canadian Fellowship twice. He was also Dr. B.R. Ambedkar National Fellow of the Indian Council of Social Science Research, ICSSR, New Delhi. He was also the founder member of Northwest Indian Sociological Association. Sir, I welcome you on behalf of the organizing committee once again. And Sir's topic will be on diasporic communities during the pandemic. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Ajalu, Professor B. Rajshekhar, Professor Arindra, Professor Chandrasekhar Bhatt, Professor Vinod Kadaria, and my dear friend, Professor Sadanand Sahu, and all others who are participating in this seminar. To begin with, let me start with this pandemic, not in the sense the way we are now witnessing it, but little bit something called history. So I take the help of the French historian Emmanuel Lavaladouri, who in his one of his very good books, The Mind and Method of the Historian, gives an idea, gives a concept, which is called unification of globe by disease. So he traces it back to plague, particularly plague, which broke out in the medieval France and continued till the early 20th century, when it was finally taken up. And then, you know, we had Spanish flu from 1918 to 1920, which is with all these, this plague and Spanish flu, they were responsible for a large number of deaths in millions. And these outbreaks changed the demographic structure of most of the societies where it occurred. And something which very interesting happened in the Spanish flu was that the post-Spanish flu area, the times in Europe were very different from the pre-First World War area. And there was some change in the moral structure of society. There was major change in the political authoritarianism, the way dictatorships came and all those things happened. But when we look at this pandemic, we are witnessing something very different and unique. And what unique is related with what happened just when Bolshevik army was advancing towards Germany, and how the East Germans living in the East region, they started migrating to the Western side. And also in 1947, when partition took place and the major movement occurred, the number of deaths which are caused by pandemic is very, very low in comparison to Spanish flu. Still, we have not reached million. But in the case of Spanish flu, much more deaths took place. Maybe that we are more aware, maybe that we are more developed, and all societies are working for it. Now, what we are now witnessing is that we are receiving back a large number of Indians from outside. They're coming from different parts. it has seriously affected, or rather adversely affected, our transient diaspora in the Middle East, and they are coming in great numbers. They are jobless, workless. I don't know to what extent they have resources when they have reached India. But there are some societies who have tried to manage diaspora communities. You know, we have two kinds of diaspora communities in Western Europe. One is that large number of students from India have gone to the Western country. One is Europe, but the preferred destination is always what I call North America, Canada and USA. USA is unable to do something with these students, but Canada has done something which has managed tremendously. But I would like to talk about Canada and America in one particular context, to talk about pandemic. Now, one thing what has happened is that there are certain occupations in these North American countries which have been taken over by immigrants. And when they have taken over by immigrants, the salary structure has come down. They are paid low. So the low paid occupations, which were earlier high paid occupations, one of them is nursing. Now, nursing occupation is something where the pay is less. And recently one article by Margaret Walton Roberts came up, which talks about that how this labor market exclusion is working in the case of these nurses, where they are paid low salary. And when they are paid low salary, they have to work at other places, because like India, Western countries also have some families, particularly North American, where the elderly people live at homes and they are taken care by these nurses. So they work overtime. They work at 2-3 different places in addition to the hospitals. So what happened that because these nurses were moving from one place to another to serve, they carried the virus, and which reached nursing homes. And when this virus reached nursing homes where older people were living, and older people had low level of immunity, this is something which started killing them in large numbers. Generally, I talk to some people working in nursing homes. Their argument is that every year these elderly people die in large numbers, but this time, due to pandemic, the number of deaths is very, very high. Now, this is something which never happened earlier, despite the fact there is some rate of elderly people. Now, there have been very interesting reactions to this. One reaction is that you take care of the elderly people, save them from this pandemic. The other view started coming up that to look after the elderly people who constitute almost the 1/3 of the population of North America, if they die, then the pressure on the state exchequer would decline, which means that it will help the country economically. Now, this view also worked, but in Canada managed it far better, with the exception of Quebec State, where it killed much more the elderly people. But something interesting which happened in the case of students, the way Canada handled it is just remarkable. Canadian government never talked about sending them back. Canadian government did not discriminate against the diaspora migrant communities in terms of labeling them that they are responsible. This is one which never happened there. Second was that the citizens were largely complying to the orders of the state and the advice from the doctors. But whether it was students or the diaspora, which is immigrant population, and then the local citizens and all those people, the Canadian government provided for the loss of job. They compensated them, they gave them money depending upon. One thing which the Canadian government articulated was that, look here, we will give you this much of money, but later on we would calculate that if this money is more than your wages, if it is more than your wages, you will have to return it. Something like that was also started happening. But Canada managed it well. One may say that since the population of Canada is very low in comparison to North USA, therefore it could manage well. Now, what happens is that we can then look at what Germany did. Germany has a large population in terms of everything, and it also managed very well, and it also did not let any diaspora community to unsettle. But the only problem which came was for the refugees, because refugee communities, particularly what is happening in Africa and the what we call it Middle East area, particularly Syria and some other countries, those dystopia, those disturbances. It is the refugee communities or refugees who were not looked after by even these host societies, particularly European. But otherwise, they managed their people well, whosoever they were working. They did not try to send. Now, but if we look at India, India doesn't have immigrant population. We only have encroachers. The way state defines it, that there are some people who came from outside the country and they were to be enumerated in terms of whether they are citizens or not. If they are not citizens, they are to be sent back. Otherwise, the rule that for how many years you are here is something which always works. Even USA had been regularly regularizing some of the illegal migrants before Trump, and it will again continue because the labor requirements are such. But in India, what happened is something very strange. The stage was that, first of all, in none of the states in India, the migrant labor was well registered and well recognized, which basically meant that they did not have any list of these people. They thought Aadhaar would be sufficient. And when the question of packages came, then the states forward that all the people who are here and who are working, they need assistance. And the way the anticipation of lockdown occurred and the way this Indian state understood, there could be two interpretations of this. One is that the Indian government did not think that the lockdown would continue for more than 1 month or 3-4 weeks. This was this thing. Second was that make it sure that we impose the lockdown in a way where no movement of the people take place from one state to another. Because ultimately, the lockdown would be unlocked in a way. And the moment it would be removed, then the industries and other things would start. Then from where the labor would come if this migrant labor leaves the place. No, this was also a view which was a very harsh view in a way, because they were required. No, if that is the case, then knowing that all are not fully registered, but they are working and in some of the sectors, it was essential for the state to make it sure that they survive. Now, what happens is that there is generally a view that if the people are giving taxes, if the society is well, then it is the responsibility of the state to look for what we call it, look after the people. But right from the beginning, the Indian state and the provinces or the other states, they started asking for contribution from the rich people and others to take care of it. Voluntary organizations came, and this whole thing started happening in a way that as if the Indian state doesn't have any money. It certainly did not have the resources to feed these unemployed people who had no resource, who were poor, for more than 1 month. The moment all things exhausted, everything was unsystematic. The voluntary organization also did, the resources they had dried out after 1 month or so. Then these laborers started moving. When they started moving, it is here that the federalism of India started working. The federalism transformed India into nation states like this thing. Bihar would not allow people from outside. Uttar Pradesh would not allow people from outside to pass through even the state. This happened in the case of all the states that we would not allow the movement because it would cause the spread of the disease. No, but if that were the so, then it is the responsibility of the enforcing agency to make it sure that these people do not die of hunger. Because I understand that when the people, if they do not die of disease, but because of the policies of the government, the people die of hunger or for any other reason, then all these deaths should be counted as part of pandemic deaths, which is not done. Which is not done. So there was a movement which is unparalleled in the history of India. Even the migration of people from the western part of India, from the eastern part of India to Bengal and to here to Punjab, Delhi, and other places. Even the magnitude of these migrations, which happened in 1947, was much, much lower than this particular thing. The only institution which survived in northern India particularly were the Gurdwaras who continued to serve. And since they were serving, people from various communities, they contributed to the Gurdwaras. It was not simply the Sikhs who were sending money and sources. Everybody believed that the Gurdwaras would be able to feed. But Gurdwaras were not everywhere. All Gurdwaras were not getting money. But other than that, most of the voluntary organizations, they did not have resources to continue their good work. We can make micro studies of that. But this is one thing which may need micro studies, but it needs a kind of macro view in which we have to question the way we have constituted our state and the way we have constituted a state which is not looking into the framework of the constitution through which it should work. And so what happens is that we do not know whether it is the state government who is responsible for the taking care of the pandemic patients. This is one. Second is that we do not know that if there are large number of people from Uttar Pradesh or Bihar who are living in Maharashtra, who is responsible for their welfare? Is it that it is the governments of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar who are responsible to look after them when they are generating capital and resources in the state of Maharashtra, which is the richest state in India? Or is it only when the industrialists? No, they are paying them airfare to come back to work in industry, but they did not feed them, particularly those who were working, saying that we don't have money. Because in India, we have a history. We have a history that whenever there is a hard time, we save so that we don't know how long it will continue. But the same mindset is working with the people who are with resources and they are not feeding their workers. This is something which created serious problem. And the worst sufferers, not of pandemic, but of this particular economic situation, were women and children, about which I am sure Professor Indra would talk in length. I wish the seminar all the best and thank the organizers to give me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your thought-provocative lecture on the pandemic and its impact on the migrants and the diaspora in Canada. Thank you so much.